There are more things you can configure when it comes to your routes which you set up on your router. For example, we have this pretty nice feature of nested routes. In some applications, you might want to have, you could say, a router inside of another router. Let me give you an example. Let's say our team members should not be loaded on a new standalone page, but instead when I click View Members here, I want to load the members for that team above that list of teams. So on the same page, I want to embed my members of that team. That's something which you might want to do. And that's something which is possible with the View router. We got this route here, which is responsible for loading our team members, and currently it's a standalone route defined next to the teams route, basically on the root level of all our routes. These routes are all on the same level. They're siblings to each other. Now you can set up a nested route by going to the route where you want to nest routes inside and adding the children option on the route config. Children takes an array, and it takes an array of routes. So the same routes we set up here in routes are added to children. So here on teams, we can now take this route and move it in there. And now I reformatted this to make it a bit easier to read. So now inside of my teams route, I have a child route, which is this one. And here you don't need to repeat the entire path. You can just add the segments which should go after this segment, so after /teams. And you can have more than one route in here. If you had multiple routes that should be nested inside of teams, you could absolutely add them there. Here I just needed one route though, but this route will now be reached with teams / and then some ID like T1. And now what's the difference with having a nested route? Well, one difference is that if I save this, if I click View Members, now we don't load our team members route anymore. And the reason for that is that View, the View router to be precise, doesn't know anymore where to load this. Because now the team members route, this one here, is no longer a root route. It's no longer registered directly inside of routes. It's a child route of another route. Now, the router view component, which we use in app view, is our topmost router view component we have in this entire app, and it's only responsible for the root routes. So for the routes directly registered in the routes array. So this child route cannot be rendered into this router view. Instead, you now need to add a second router view in the component where this route is defined as a child component. So in this case, in our team's list component, that's the component which has this as a child route. So it's the team's list component where you now need to add an extra router view for all the child routes. In this case, for the one child route we got. So in team's list, above the unordered list, for example, we can now add another router view. And this router view will now be important for all the child routes of the team's list component route, so of this route. Hence, now if I go back to teams and reload, we see nothing because it's just /teams. But if I click on view members, now we see our members for that team. If I change the team here, you see that updates up there. And of course, we can do this for all the teams. And that's another nice feature, having these nested routes. You will also notice that with the nested route, if my URL changes to that nested route, Teams is still highlighted up there. It wasn't before, if you recognize that. Before, where this route was a separate root route, as a sibling to the teams route. Before, even though that route also started with /teams, this link was not highlighted because the active class is only applied if the currently loaded path is actually related to the path this link points at. And this link points at /teams. /teams T1 is now a nested route on this Teams route, and therefore, whenever some nested route is active, this link is treated as active. That's why now the active CSS class is being added here. But that's just an extra side note related to nested routes. And nested routes can be a really useful feature for building complex user interfaces where you want to load different parts, maybe nested in different components based on different URLs and paths. And that's exactly what we're doing here.